When the temperature dropped to minus 48 degrees that January night in 1965, I knew my fire wouldn't last until dawn. I had maybe 4 hours of burning time left. I needed 8 hours of sleep. The thermometer outside my lean-to was already showing the cold was getting worse, not better. Every 2 hours, I'd have to wake up half frozen and feed that fire more wood. This was killing me. All the other trappers in the Canadian wilderness back then, they did the same thing. Wake up, stoke the fire, try to get warm again, sleep another couple hours if you were lucky. I was awake 18 times each night. Most of them froze to death in their 50s, not from one bad night, from 10,000 bad nights, from the exhaustion of never sleeping deeper than a dog, always listening for the fire dying. I was 28 years old and already losing my mind to it. The cold wasn't the real enemy anymore. It was the exhaustion. My body was shutting down. My hands shook constantly. I couldn't trap anymore because I was too tired to focus. Then one morning, an old Cree trapper named Thomas stopped by my camp. He looked at my fire setup and just shook his head. He didn't say much, but what he showed me that day changed everything. He taught me an arrangement so simple, so elegant, that I'd sleep 8 hours straight without waking once. My fire would feed itself. The other trappers in my region said it was impossible. They called it foolish. They said I'd freeze to death, but I was desperate enough to try. What I learned from Thomas that morning would keep me alive for the next 40 years. I came to this region in 1963 with maybe 3 years of trapping experience. I was green, but I thought I knew enough. I'd learned the basics in the Adirondacks. The standard method everyone used was the log cabin lay or the teepee. You'd stack your wood in a box shape or lean it against a ridgepole, and you'd pack kindling in the middle. It was practical. It was quick. Every experienced trapper did it that way. There had to be a reason, right? So I built my fires the same way for 2 winters. But I was making critical mistakes without even knowing it. I was using logs that were too thick, sometimes 6 or 8 inches in diameter. I'd spaced them too far apart, which meant heat escaped everywhere. I was using whatever deadfall I found, not paying attention to wood type. Half the time I had wet wood mixed in with the dry. The result was brutal. I'd wake up every 90 minutes to 2 hours because the fire was dying faster than I expected. By the end of each winter, I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, broken into pieces. I'd lose 15 to 20 pounds. My hands got infected because I couldn't keep them warm and dry. I remember one February morning I woke up and couldn't feel my toes. I thought I had frostbite. That's when I knew something had to change. If you like the kind of practical knowledge that can actually save your life, subscribe to the channel. I post a new survival technique every week, all tested during my 40 years alone in the wilderness. Now let's get to what really matters. I met Thomas through a Cree trader named Michel who stopped by my camp in early 1964. Michel was bringing supplies north, and he told me about Thomas, who'd been trapping in that region for 60 years. Thomas was 82 years old then, thin as a birch branch, but his eyes were sharp. Michel brought him by one afternoon, and that's when everything shifted. Thomas watched me build my fire that evening. He sat there silent for maybe 10 minutes. Then he said, "You know, my grandfather taught me something different." He showed me how to arrange 6 logs in a star pattern, like the spokes of a wheel, all meeting at a central point. The geometry was precise. Each log pointed toward the center at exactly the same angle. As the wood burned, gravity pulled the burnt ends toward the middle, feeding the fire constantly. I was skeptical at first, I'll admit that. It sounded too simple. I'd read books about fire building. I'd talked to experienced men. Nobody mentioned this. But Thomas explained the principle, and it made sense. He said, fire needs 3 things: fuel, oxygen, and heat. Most people focus on stacking wood fast. They don't think about what happens while it burns. With this star lay, the burning creates its own momentum. The weight of each log pushes the unburned portion forward as it consumes itself. You don't need to touch it for hours. I tested it that very night, and I couldn't believe what I saw. The fire self-fed for almost 6 hours before the logs burned through completely. By morning, I had coals still going. I also learned later that this technique came from European forestry workers who'd settled in the region 50 years before. An old Swedish woodcutter named Gustav had shown some local hunters the same method. Gustav had learned it from his father in Sweden, where they used it in the deep forests during brutal winters. So this wasn't new knowledge. It was old knowledge that had been forgotten by most modern trappers who relied on constant attention instead of understanding the physics of burning wood. The wood you choose matters more than anything else. You need deadfall cedar or spruce, between 4 and 6 inches in diameter. Look for trees that have been down for at least one season, but not rotting yet. The wood should be gray on the outside, not black. Collect pieces that are 4 to 5 feet long. Never take from living trees. Dead standing wood is better than fallen wood because it dries faster. When you find your logs, test them by weight first. Pick one up with one hand. It should feel substantial but not heavy like wet wood. Tap it with your knuckles. Dry wood sounds hollow, almost like tapping a drum. Wet wood sounds dull and dead. The moisture content must be below 15%. If you bend a small branch from your log and it snaps clean with a sharp crack, the wood is ready. If it bends and doesn't break, it still has too much moisture. You need 6 logs total. All 6 should be similar in diameter and length. Uniformity is critical for the star pattern to work correctly. Gather them over 2 or 3 days if you can. Don't just grab whatever is nearby, be selective. You'll spend about 30 to 40 minutes collecting if you're efficient. Before you use the wood, strip the bark away completely. Bark holds moisture against the wood and slows burning. Use a knife or your hands to peel it off. This takes another 20 to 30 minutes for 6 logs. Store the stripped logs in a dry place, preferably elevated off the ground on rocks or sticks. Air needs to flow underneath. If you leave them on wet soil, moisture will creep back in. 3 to 5 days of storage lets any surface moisture evaporate. The night before you build your fire, inspect each log one more time. Look for soft spots, rot, or discoloration. Any section that looks compromised should be cut away or discarded. For tools, you need a sharp axe or hatchet. The blade should be at least 3 inches wide. You'll use this to sharpen one end of each log into a point. If you don't have an axe, a large knife works, but it takes longer. You need a saw if the logs are longer than 5 feet. A small buck saw is ideal. You might also need rope or strong cordage to help position the logs. I'll explain why in the next section. Preparation time is usually 1 to 2 hours total. Rush this and you'll regret it later. Take your time now and the fire builds itself. The first major change was understanding that each log point must face toward the exact center of your fire. The angle between any 2 adjacent logs should be 60 degrees. 6 logs at 60 degrees each gives you complete coverage. I use a simple method to mark this. I place a stick on the ground as a center marker. Then I position each log so its thick end rests about 2 feet away from that center point. The pointed end faces inward toward the middle. The logs should form a perfect star when viewed from above. If any log points toward a different spot, the geometry breaks down and the fire won't self-feed properly. Check your geometry before lighting anything. This step takes about 10 minutes and it's the most important part of the entire process. The second major change involved preparing the center for ignition. This is where the fire actually starts. Gather dry tinder, the finest, driest material you can find. Birch bark is ideal, or cedar bark if you have it. You need roughly 2 handfuls compressed loosely together. Around this tinder, layer kindling. Split wood pencil thin, about 6 inches long. Use about 4 to 5 handfuls of this kindling arranged in a loose crisscross pattern. The kindling should form a nest around your tinder ball. The tinder sits at ground level. The kindling is elevated slightly on top of the tinder. This creates airflow underneath. The distance from the tip of your first log to this kindling nest should be about 3 to 4 inches. If it's farther, the flames won't reach the log ends easily. If it's closer, the logs might shift before the fire is established. Spend about 15 minutes arranging this correctly. It makes the difference between a fire that catches immediately and one that smolders and dies. The third major change was the ignition sequence. Start by lighting the tinder from underneath using a match or spark. Let it establish fully for about 2 minutes before you're confident it's burning. Once the tinder is going strong, the kindling will catch within the next 3 to 5 minutes. Watch for the first tendrils of flame reaching the log ends. This is the critical moment. You'll see the thin branches of kindling start to blacken and curl. When the flames reach the log points and start consuming the wood there, the fire is self-sustaining. Total time from match to established fire is usually 8 to 12 minutes. Most people light their tinder too gently. You want vigorous flames at this point, not a smoldering spark. Flame height should reach at least 6 inches before you stop adding kindling. The error most people make is lighting too weak or adding wet wood too early. Hold back. Let the fire establish its own rhythm first. Only then does the geometry you created start working in your favor. The fourth element addressed the first critical hours of unattended burning. Once the fire is established, the logs begin consuming their points gradually. As they burn, gravity pulls the thicker unburned portions toward the center. This is automatic. You don't make it happen, but you need to watch this process and make adjustments. For the first 3 hours, check the fire every 45 minutes. Walk around it. Look at each log. The burned ends should move toward the center about 1 to 1.5 inches every 30 minutes. If they're moving faster, the fire is too hot and will burn out sooner. If they're moving slower, the fire isn't hot enough and might die completely. The movement should feel steady and inevitable, not rushed. When a log reaches the point where only about 2 feet of unburned wood remains before the center, you can shift it slightly forward. Use a long stick to push the log about 6 inches closer to the center. Do this gently. Don't jostle it violently. The fire should continue burning without interruption. These adjustments take about 2 minutes each, and you make them sparingly, maybe 3 or 4 times over the first night. The fifth element involved the final configuration before sleep. After the first 3 hours, your fire should be burning predictably. Each log is consuming itself at a steady rate. At this point, push all 6 logs simultaneously one final time, so every log end is about 2 to 3 inches from the center point. Make sure no log is significantly closer or farther than the others. Uneven logs create gaps where heat escapes. Position yourself about 8 to 10 feet away from the fire. This is your safe sleeping distance. You want the heat reaching you, but not so close that wind direction matters critically. On very cold nights, -30 or colder, you might sleep as close as 6 feet away. Your sleeping area should be elevated slightly off the ground if possible. This helps prevent ground cold from draining your body heat. The fire at this point should maintain interior temperatures around 35 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit within the immediate shelter area. That's not warm, but combined with proper insulation below you, it's survivable. Once you're settled in your sleeping area, the fire runs completely unattended. At this stage, you've done everything. The logs burn, gravity works, the fire persists. You sleep 8 uninterrupted hours if the logs are long enough and the wood is truly dry. That first night in February of 1965, I built the Starlay exactly as Thomas had shown me. The temperature outside was dropping toward -35 degrees. I measured everything carefully. 6 spruce logs, each one 4 feet long and 5 inches in diameter. I positioned them at 60-degree angles from each other. The kindling and tinder went in the center, just like he'd explained. When I lit that fire, something shifted. The flames caught the log points and held steady. I checked it every 30 minutes for the first 3 hours, watching those burned ends creep toward the center. Predictable and mechanical. Then I did something I'd never done before. I lay down and actually tried to sleep. Not just rest, real sleep. I woke up 8 hours later. The fire was still burning. My body temperature had stayed above 50 degrees inside my lean-to. I'd slept every moment without waking once. Before this, I was waking up every 90 minutes to 2 hours. I was sleeping maybe 3 to 4 hours total each night, broken into fragments. After the star lay, I was getting 8 continuous hours. That's 100% improvement in sleep quality. My energy the next day felt different, clearer, stronger. My hands stopped shaking for the first time in 2 years. Over the next 35 winters, I built this fire lay maybe 2,000 times. I built it in temperatures ranging from -20 degrees up to -55 degrees. I built it in heavy snow, in rain, in wind. The success rate was 98.5%. The only times it failed were when I used wood that was too wet, or when I made a geometric mistake positioning the logs. Those failures taught me lessons. The technique itself never failed when executed correctly. I used this star lay to extend my trapping season by 4 extra months each year. That meant more pelts, more income, but more importantly, more security. I wasn't constantly exhausted. My decision-making improved. My hands stayed healthy. Other trappers started asking me why I looked so rested. By 1967, 3 other men in my region were using the star lay. By 1970, maybe a dozen. They all reported the same results. Sleep improved. Fuel consumption dropped dramatically. I burned about 12 to 15 pounds of wood per night with the star lay compared to 35 to 40 pounds using the traditional TP method. That's a 65% reduction in wood needed. The most critical validation came in February of 1973. I was caught in a storm about 8 miles from my camp. Temperature hit -52 degrees. Wind was brutal. I had maybe 4 hours until I'd lose feeling in my extremities permanently. I had an axe, my knife, and nothing else. I found dead spruce nearby and built a star lay in near total darkness. That fire kept me alive for 14 hours straight while the storm passed. I didn't sleep during those 14 hours, but I stayed warm enough to survive. If I'd been dependent on waking up every 2 hours to feed a traditional fire while exhausted and disoriented, I would have died that night. The mathematics of the star lay saved my life. This technique works for modern camping too. Anyone can learn it. You don't need expensive equipment or years of experience. I've taught this to weekend campers, preppers building their skills, homesteaders preparing for emergencies. Every single person who builds it correctly reports the same results. Your fuel consumption drops by 60 to 70%. Your sleep quality improves dramatically. Your core temperature stays stable through the night. For emergencies, it's priceless. You're not burning through your limited firewood supply rapidly. You're not waking up in terror because the fire died. You're resting while nature handles the work. What 40 years alone taught me is this. Survival isn't about working harder. It's about understanding how things work and letting physics do the labor. Thomas knew this. Gustav knew this. The old knowledge wasn't forgotten because it was inferior. It was forgotten because modern life made us think we needed complicated solutions to simple problems. We forgot that gravity works. We forgot that geometry matters. We forgot that careful observation teaches you more than any book. This star lay is simple, it's elegant. It's been used for centuries across different continents by people who understood the fundamentals. You can use it tonight if you gather the right wood. Listen, I spent 40 years learning these techniques the hard way. Freezing, starving, making mistakes that nearly killed me. My goal with this channel is to give you that knowledge without the suffering. If you want to learn more survival techniques that actually work when your life depends on them, subscribe to the channel. I post new methods every week, all tested by me during 4 decades in the wilderness. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Leave a like if this video was useful. Tell me in the comments, have you ever built a fire that lasted through the night? What method did you use? If you want to see another technique that saved my life even more times than this one, click the video appearing on your screen right now. It's about building emergency shelter in extreme cold. Remember, this channel presents fictional stories for educational purposes, produced with artificial intelligence assistance. Stay safe out there.